I'm starting the live recording, inshallah. Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Esselatu vesselamu ala Resulina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ecmain. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. As you know, the month of Ramadan is almost here, so to better prepare ourselves spiritually and mentally, it's always good to remember the importance of Ramadan, the wisdoms of it, and the fruits of it. Because of that, for this week and upcoming few weeks, we decided to read a chapter from the Risale-i Nur collection on this very subject. Specifically, it is the 29th letter, second station from the book Letters, inshallah. As our speakers, we have Brother Colin Turner from the UK and Brother Nejati Aydin from Saudi Arabia joining us. Welcome, brothers. And my name is Mohammed Furkan, joining from Connecticut, United States, and I'll be moderating the session today, inshallah. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please post them in the chat and I'll try to get to them as time permits, inshallah. So let's get started. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. On fasting, meanings and messages from the month of Ramadan. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. This treatise consists of 9 points, each of which explains some of the instances of wisdom in the month of Ramadan. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. It was the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was bestowed from on high as a guidance unto man, and a self-evident proof of that guidance, and as the standard to discern true from false. Quran 2:185. The first point, the fast of Ramadan, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam and one of the faith's greatest signs or distinguishing features. So I want to read this sentence again. The fast of Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam and one of the faith's greatest signs or distinguishing features. So I think this is in the original Shair. Brother Nejati, would you like to talk a little bit about what is the Shair and what it means to us, please?
I think, Shair, it's a certain thing that's clearly reveal, so the identity of individuals as a Muslim in this regard. Islamic Shair means that there are signs of Islam. So like Adhan is a Shair, that when you see and hear Adhan, that you know that places are, there are Muslims there. So in this case, fasting is one of Shair, so which basically means though it's not limited to Islam, but I think fasting as Muslims do, it's quite unique. I don't know, it's like, I think some Jew might have a similar one, but fasting in Christianity is not exactly like Muslim do. So in a sense that fasting, particularly for 1 month in Ramadan, it's very clear, it's unique. It's a unique sign of Islam or being Muslim. That's what Shair mean, I think. And the important Shair here is like, because there is scholarly discussion says that Shair, since it's it's a sign of Islam's, and so it has higher importance compared to, let's say, the fards related to the individual alone. That's like the mandatory things for person versus Shair, that when they make comparisons, they think that Shair has a special importance because it is representing Islam in general. That's what I understand. I don't know. Maybe Kol Nabi will say more.
Yeah, Kol Nabi, do you have anything to add here?
No, not really. Shair are just distinguishing characteristics which distinguish one thing from another. So those things which are, in a sense, indigenously Islamic or indigenously Quranic, they are Shair of Islam and of nothing else. So the abstaining month, the month of abstention, and I think abstention is the larger, broader term rather than fasting. Fasting implies that it is basically just withholding oneself from food and drink, whereas abstention is much wider. But fast, everyone understands what fast is, and they understand the implications. So the abstention in Ramadan, again, as Najati said, it's not unique to Islam, but the form in which it takes is unique. And I think the meaning behind it also is pretty unique.
Jazakallah. Okay, so I'll continue. The fast of Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam and one of the faith's greatest signs or distinguishing features. There are numerous wise purposes in the Ramadan fast. These wisdoms pertain both to Allah's dominicality rububiyyah and to man's personal and social life. They are also linked to the training of the lower self known as tazkiyah and to the gratitude felt for all of the bounties given by Allah. So here it counted 4 purposes, wisdoms. One of them, the first one is about Allah's dominicality, rububiyyah. The second is to man's personal and social life. Also, we can say there are 2 separate wisdoms here. And the third is to training the lower self known as tazkiyah, and to the gratitude felt for all of the bounties given by Allah. So inshallah, it's gonna explain here one by one what these wisdoms are and how we can better understand them. One of the many wise purposes of fasting in Ramadan is as follows. God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, created the face of the earth in the form of a banquet table, covered with bounties, each of them coming from whence he does not expect. This verse, a verse from Quran. In arranging this banquet, Allah expresses the perfection of his lordship as well as his mercy and compassion. Since we are enmeshed in a world of cause and effect and veiled by forgetfulness, the reality of the situation is often lost on us. So one question coming to my mind here is, how can we better understand that all the ni'mah, all the bounties in this world has a purpose? So they are given to us for some reason. Brother Najati, can we start with you, please?
I think again when I look at the first one is, first of all, what you really it's really interesting when we reflect on this piece. The first question I got it is like, why the very first or the most important wisdom is rububiyyah, in a sense that what does it mean? And so I think that's, you even go back to the question of like why Allah wants us to really abstain, from eating, drinking, and other things that is quite difficult to our nafs. So why does he, want us to go through such, in a way, let's say, suffering or painful experience? I mean, to a certain extent, particularly, let's say, you stay away from eating and drinking for sometime 24 hours, and if you live in a hot place, so you can really feel the pain of, abstention in this case. So I think that it seems like what in this part, what Nursi is saying, the very first wisdom behind that, the reason that fasting is ordained on us is to understand the rububiyyah, So the question of how, how can we understand? I think that's what is really explained here. What really attracted my attention here is forgetfulness. Now, what do we forget? And it seems like, is the Ramadan, is the fasting is really ordained for us to remember something, to gain a conscious of something, be aware of something, that we forget it. So what we forget it here is that we forget that who is our creator, who sustains us from moment to moment, who opens, a generous, table bounties for us every day. So it seems like we forget them. And, this question of forgetfulness really, I think first I came across this when I was reading Heidegger. So one of the concepts that he brought it is, I find it very interesting. He called it forgetting question. His arguments that forgetting questions since the ancient Greek is the question regarding the being, because we just take it for granted. So, and I think that you can take it this further. You say, whatever you have it, that you really forget it, that you don't really appreciate until you lose it. So I think it's very interesting that how would you forget the being? How would you forget the bounty of, granted such countless, ni'mah? How would you forget that? But it seems like it's just the nature of human being to be forgetful of what they have it. So I think the phrase in English is taken for granted. I take this phrase as like being forgetful of what you have, being forgetful what you have been granted. So in that case, I think it seems like the primary wisdom behind the fasting is to really remember. Now, how would you remember? So it seems like it's just a part of human nature. You don't really appreciate health until you lose it. You don't appreciate a particular, let's say, appreciate your eyes until you get blind. You don't truly appreciate that. So that's just very interesting things with the human being. So, and in this regard, what he's saying, look, as a human being, that we are forgetful, though we are being granted in Quranic term countless bounties. If you count them, you can never be done with that. But we're forgetful of them altogether. So, and the month of Ramadan, it seems like is an opportunity to remember, because when we are temporarily ordered to stay away what has been granted to us continuously, then we start to think and remember and realize and be aware of what is there. And then we ask the question, who is the one providing this? Who is the one then giving all these things to us? And then, of course, once we realize our need for that, I think that's the concept when you read toward the end, is this realization of rububiyyah will take you to the ubudiyyah. Then you submit it. Then you truly become abd. You realize that you are impotent. You realize your poverty, and then you submit. You submit to the one who sustain your life, who sustain everything for you. That's why I really think it seems like it's very. So to me, is when I look at this one, the key concept here is I call it like a forgotten bounties, forgotten feasts that we got every day, but we just somehow become blind to that. It's unbelievable. It's like you get, billions of dollars in your account every day, but since constantly you get it, these billions, you just forget about that. You just take it for granted, and you focus on like how many cents you have it today, extra or less or more. That's the part, I don't know, that came to my mind when I reflect on this first part.
Thank you very much. Brother Colin, anything you want to add about forgetfulness or this part till now?
Possibly. I think one of the reasons, we are forgetful anyway, constitutionally. We're created to be forgetful, and we don't need any encouragement to be forgetful. But one of the reasons that we are forgetful is that we tend to limit rububiyyah to things that we can actually experience openly. So this is why I think we call this month fasting, because we are most used to withholding drink and food from ourselves. Whereas in actual fact, rububiyyah, if we understand it in its broadest term, is anything that God bestows on us for the continuation of our existence. So every breath is coming from divine lordliness, which is the translation we're using now for rububiyyah. every breath that we take is an example of a divine bounty. Every single atom in our body that is doing its duty is from Allah's treasure trove of bounties. And so this is ubiquitous, you know, this consumption of what comes from the Alam Malakut. It is in a sense consumption because we take it in. It becomes part of our being. This is continuous. It's every second. And again, that might be a key to why we forget. Because if it's continuous, then one tends to forget. If it only happens every, 10 seconds or 10 minutes or 10 days, there is a kind of, how can you say, a reminder really. But this is continuous. Rububiyyah is something continuous. So while we shouldn't be forgetting something which is continuous, it's very easy to forget.
So as Brother Necati said, so we have to lose something sometimes, unfortunately, to be able to remember it, that it is there, it is a bounty from Allah, it's not given, I guess. So I'll continue reading, inshallah. Actually, let me reread the last two sentences. In arranging this banquet, Allah expresses the perfection of His Lordship as well as His mercy and compassion. Since we are enmeshed in a world of cause and effect and veiled by forgetfulness, the reality of this situation is often lost on us. During the month of Ramadan, however, the people of belief suddenly take on the stance and demeanor of a well-organized army. As sunset approaches, they act as though they have been invited to the eternal monarch's feast, waiting patiently and worshipfully for the command, step forward and help yourselves. The mercy of their Lord is compassionate and universal, and they respond to it with worship that is orderly, elevated, and comprehensive. The mercy of their Lord is compassionate and universal, and they respond to it with worship that is orderly, elevated, and comprehensive. So one question coming to my mind is, what is a comprehensive worship? What it means? Brother Colin?
Comprehensive means all embracing. And as far as I can see, when we pray, we say, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Yeah.
Yes.
So we are actually talking on behalf of the whole of creation, because we're using the second person, the first person plural. So universal worship actually is, in a sense, in Ramadan, because it's so all invasive and all encompassing. Everything is worship. You know, our namaz, our salat is worship, our abstaining is worship, our zikr is worship. Everything is turned into worship. And this is not just us. This is everything that is part of our body, the angels that are with us, the angels that are all around us, and all of the universe is engaged in this communion with Allah. They are engaged all the time, and they are not forgetful. So when we remember, then worship becomes truly universal, and the whole universe is engaged in the same kind of worship.
Jazakallah. Brother Necati, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, I think one other things in that section, perhaps we need to emphasize that why we become forgetful, it seems like he is saying that because of the veil of causation. So since that the veil of causation somehow, if we cannot go beyond that, we don't really see the divine hand behind this banquet. So in a sense, again, I really want to, again, it's like you're invited to the banquet every day, and a banquet with countless, bounties. And who is providing, why he is providing, is actually the creator of the universe providing this. Why he's doing that? Because he is most merciful, most kind. He's completely out of his kindness and compassion. So he doesn't need to do that. No one can force him to do that. So it's only because of his kindness and mercy and compassion. So in that case, basically, the issue here that this forgotten banquet, it's forgotten because it comes through the causes. It comes through, let's say, the tree will carry the fruit to you, the cow will bring the milk to you, the bees will bring honey to you. That now they are carrier. They carry those, those bounties to you. But now, since it comes through those causes, then it seems like we tend to forget who is the provider. We start to think as if those carrier are actually the maker, are the owner of those bounties. So that's, I think, is a very interesting one. If you remember in the Quran, when it talks about the story of, the story of Moses alayhi salam, when, the table came out directly from the heaven every day, twice. So of course, I guess first time when they get the table coming from the heaven, I'm sure they were shocked, But it's interesting, after a while, they get used to even this type of, direct bounties. And they start to complain and say, oh, we wanted this as well, as if like, this is just an ordinary table. I think in a sense that it seems like it doesn't matter where the table come from the skies or come from the cows and camels and the trees and bees. So once we, after a while that we get used to and start to just be forgetful of the true source of the bounties. So I think that part is very, very interesting. So in this case, that Ramadan is a time of reflection, to remove the veil of causation, to realize the divine power behind all those bounties that we receive. So I think that's part. It's very, very interesting. That's why I call it is like a forgotten feast that we are invited, we receive. We have this feast every day, but we become forgetful of that feast. One things I really, I try to really, study and understand why people are happy, what they are not happy. And then when I study let's say the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, we call Asr Sa'ada, the era of happiness, real happiness. But in reality, when I reflect, you should call it the age of deprivation. They were deprived of many things that we consider necessary for happiness. But how could they have been happy with such deprivation? But I think the things here, what they were deprived, yes, they were deprived of something that we have at this time, but they were fully aware of countless blessings they will receive, and we also receive every day. So in this case, since they were aware of this countless blessing, this feast that they will receive every day, they were really happy, no matter what, in terms of whether they will get it, extra one or two more or less, that doesn't really matter. So as I mentioned, it's like if someone's actually putting $100 billion in your account every day, so you don't really care about whether you work for today, 10 more or 100 more or 1,000 more, because 10, 100,000 compared to 100 billion is nothing anyway. That will not be the cause of happiness or unhappiness for you. So the baseline for you is that you're already receiving billions every day. So I think that is the part here. So the part in this case is saying that there's such constant blessing for every single human being. It's universal. It comes out of the mercy and kindness of Creator. But people, because ghafla, heedlessness, or because of the veil of causation, and I will say mostly that's now in modern times education, reinforce such veil and make it veil to be somehow darker and darker. And as a result, we don't really see the power behind this banquet. And that's the issue. Not only we don't see the power, we don't actually see the banquet itself. And then we start to complain that we lose our joy and happiness in life because we don't really see the blessing that we received. So I think that's, in this case, is the primary purpose, wisdom, or behind fasting, according to Nursi here, is to really have realization and awareness of the such reality that you are being blessed with countless bounties completely out of the infinite mercy and compassion of Creator. So having such awareness, I think it's the greatest, blessing itself. It's like finding an endless, countless treasure. So therefore, I think fasting is very, very important if it can help us to really, reach such level of awareness. And then it says that once you get that, obviously, then the worship of Buddha just follow. Why? Because once you understand such rububiyah, what would you do? You submit, and you will, in this case, worship with comprehensive gratitude. Why? Because you realize the countless blessing. And therefore, when you say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, so this hamd here, it's basically thanks here is a comprehensive, because you're aware of what you're receiving, and you're aware of what everyone and everything else is receiving out of this, blessing, and you're expressing your deep, comprehensive appreciation.
Jazakallah. So let me read that last sentence again. The mercy of their Lord is compassionate and universal, and they respond to it with worship that is orderly, elevated, and comprehensive. Do you think that those who don't worship in this way and who are unwilling to participate in such a feast deserve to be called human? So this is also interesting. Normally, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi doesn't use, let's say, harsh language, but I think there is a reason why he used this. Any thoughts on this? Deserve to be called human. Brother Colin, anything coming to your mind?
I think that the pinnacle of humanity comes with the highest point of submission. So the more submitted we are as beings, and the more faithful we are to the precepts of the amana, then the more human we truly become. And there are so many levels on which Ramadan and the abstentions of Ramadan contribute to the elevation of human being from basically half animal, half angel, to someone who is way above the angels in every sense of the word. So when we are faithful to this amana, the more faithful we are, the more human we are. I don't think that this is if we say, are the people who don't fast inhuman? I would say subhuman, and I don't mean that in a nasty way or in an insulting way or in a demeaning way, but we don't fulfill our duties as humans until we act like humans. And acting like human means to be submissive in every single domain of our life and reflecting, being a conscious mirror of the divine attributes. And if we don't do that, Ramadan is the perfect time for that. As I said, on many, many levels, we are in a sense moving away from our gross animality. We're not eating and drinking, therefore we're not defecating and urinating for most of the day. So we move away from these base actions which really ground us in our corporeality, they ground us in our animality, which is not a bad thing, because the world is populated by animals, but we are more than that. We are potentially more than just a corporeal entity. And if you think about it, fasting is designed to make us think of ourselves as an elevated, subtle, latif, sophisticated creation of Allah, who is more equipped than any other entity of becoming this conscious mirror for all of the divine names. It's a perfect time to express that. so this is why he says those who don't participate in this in this event, in this performance, are not really fulfilling the criteria of what it means to be human.
Thank you very much. So before we proceed, there are a couple brothers wrote something in the chat. So, sure. Sure.
I think I agree with Colin Abbey. I really think when I was reading for initially, and I used to think that it's kind of insult to those who do not fast, and knowing Nursi's common language and compassion, and even when those remember, you know, those who are committing, let's say, sin, he will cry for their sin. You will not, you know, curse them or insult them. So, and it's very interesting to cry for sin or someone, and then now you're insulting them. I don't think, to me, that's really not insulting. I kind of think in the same way. I think it's saying that Ramadan, the primary wisdom behind Ramadan to understand Rububiyyah, once you understand that, you will reveal or show your Rububiyyah. So, and that you become Abd. So human, in this case, an Abd basically means to submit. So it reminds me, you know, the verse in Quran that talks between about Ibrahim alayhi salam, where it says, إِذْ قَالِ لَهُ أَسْلِمْ. You know, his God told him, submit. And he said, is in response, he said, قال أسلمت لرب العالمين. What he said, he did not say, قال أسلمتك. He did not say, قال أسلم. He did not say, oh, I submit to you. He said, I submit to the Rabb al-Alamin, meaning that he, in my understanding, his response is that, who am I? How can I not submit to you once I realize that everything is in full submission to you? Rabb al-Alamin means everything is in full submission. You sustain everything, you create everything from moment to moment, including me. And who am I? Once I come to such realization, how can I not submit it? So I think that's exactly here, to me, is like in the same meaning here, saying that once we come to such realization, how can you not, you know, join in such behavior of fasting?
Good point. Thank you. Jazakallah. Yeah, so just a couple comments in the chat. Brother Mustafa says, in Ramadan, it's becoming more clear the real duty of Quran, as Ustad mentioned in the 20th word. Quran's basic duty is to teach about the perfections and acts in the sphere of dominicality, Rububiyyah, and the duties and circumstances in the sphere of worship. Quran's basic duty is to teach about the perfections and acts in the sphere of dominicality and the duties and circumstances in the sphere of worship. And another comment from Brother Mehmet says, fasting reminds me of the true source of reflections on my mirror, and I force myself to remember true power and Qayyum and Hayy and Shafi and Yumit and so on. And just now, Brother Fatih says, let's remember that the people who are not fasting without excuse, of course, are insulting the Creator and the creation. Ustad's insult is nothing when compared to their insult, I guess. That's what he says. Okay, so after this, it goes to second point. So before we move on, Brother Nejati or Brother Colin, do you want to add anything else, or shall we?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
Me too. We can move to the second one.
And apart from the main speakers, we also have some guest speakers. So if you have any comments to make, you can, as usual, post in the chat or unmute yourself, and please, you're welcome. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The second point, one of the many wise purposes behind fasting in Ramadan concerns humankind's thankfulness for Allah's bounties and is as follows. As explained in the first word, a price must be paid for the food that the servants bring on trays from the royal kitchen. How foolish it would be then if we were to give the waiter a tip while ignoring the one who sent them in the first place and dismissing those priceless bounties as worthless. a price must be paid for the food that the servants bring on trays from the royal kitchen. How foolish it would be then if we were to give the waiter, the servant, a tip, while ignoring the one who sent them in the first place and dismissing those priceless bounties as worthless. God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has scattered countless bounties across the face of the earth for mankind, and in return, He requires us to pay for them with our gratitude. The apparent causes behind those bounties are nothing more than servants or tray bearers. The apparent causes behind those bounties are nothing more than servants or tray bearers. We are to an extent indebted to those servants, and we pay them a price accordingly, showing them great respect and gratitude that in actual fact they don't merit. The true bestower of bounties is infinitely more deserving of thanks than are those causes, which are simply the means whereby those bounties are delivered. Let me read the last sentence again. The true bestower of bounties is infinitely more deserving of thanks than are those causes, which are simply the means whereby those bounties are delivered. So, any comments up to here, Brother Nejati? Any thoughts?
Maybe we read to the end, then we can come revisit and make, because they're linked to each other. Therefore,
sure, inshallah. To thank Him then is to recognize that those bounties come from Him directly. To thank Him is to appreciate their worth and to acknowledge our own need for them. So thanking the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, means kind of three things here, or requires three steps. First is to recognize that those bounties come from Him directly, and to appreciate their worth, the bounty's worth, and to acknowledge our own need for them. Fasting in Ramadan is thus the key to true, sincere, comprehensive, and universal gratitude. This is because at other times of the year, most people who are relatively well off don't realize the value of the bounties they receive, since they don't experience real hunger or true need. Those whose stomachs are full, especially if they are rich, don't understand the bounty there is in a single piece of dry bread. When the time to break the fast arrives, however, a believer's taste buds testify that dry bread is one of Allah's most precious and valuable bounties. During Ramadan, everyone, from king to beggar, expresses a kind of gratitude through understanding the true worth of those bounties. Moreover, since eating is forbidden during daylight hours, those who have fasted will say, "These bounties do not belong to me. I'm not free to eat them since they belong to another and have given to us as gifts. I will therefore wait for his command." They will recognize the bounty as a bounty, and they will give thanks accordingly. Fasting is in many respects like a key to gratitude, which is one of humankind's fundamental duties. So if we go back to the third paragraph here, I don't know if you have anything specific to say, but the one question I have in mind here is, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi Ustad counted here three steps to be thankful, I guess. So maybe I can start with that, unless you have anything else also to add. What do you think from here? What do you understand from here, Brother Nejati?
Yeah, so I think that yeah, this is it's in this part is very much linked to the first wisdom. So the first wisdom was all about coming to the realization and recognition of the countless bounties that we receive. And then once we have such a realization and understanding, then in the second step, then we basically we offer our gratitude. So, but to offer our gratitude, then in this, we need to go through certain steps. That's what you're talking, the 3 steps. That's it seems like that's really helping us to have pure, sincere, comprehensive gratitude. So which means, if when you say thank you, but a different way of really expressing thank you. So this thank you that we will say in month of Ramadan, when we're fasting, it seems like that's very sincere, comes from the heart. Why? And that's because of those 3 reasons. First is saying that basically we need to know who is the provider, who is the owner, which means that we need to reflect and recognize that the cause are just a veil and the true provider is God. So the reason that when we are abstain from let's say the food, that one message to us is that, the owner of all of them is God. So in that case, the more we reflect and the more we understand, the more we remove the veil of causation and overcome the heedlessness and see the merciful hand behind all those bounties, that the more likely we will be thankful to him directly. So that's the first condition, meaning the first condition is to really overcome the veil of causation, to understand that he is the one providing, directly sending this gift to us. That's the one. The second one, then it says that even when you get this gift, so then you need to see the value of it. You can get a gift of $10, $100, $1,000, $10,000, $1 million, $1 billion, obviously is not same. So if you get a gift, and if you open, let's say, the envelope, you find there's a check, and you find out is $100 billion, I think if you really believe it's true, you will most likely say it's fake, it's not possible. But if, let's say, you go and check it and you realize that really there's there's someone who really loves you and cares about you and just wants to give you such gifts, I think you will be absolutely shocked. $100 billion gift, So that's then your appreciation, your thank you will be completely different because you understand the value of the gift. That's the second one. The third one, so you might understand the value, but let's say you don't understand your need for that. Like, let's say again, you get very expensive gift, but you're already extremely rich. You don't really need it. So then you might not really appreciate that. But if you extremely in need of something and the gift you get it is a perfect match to fulfill your need, and I think your appreciation is absolutely multiplied. So here is saying that in the month of Ramadan, when we abstain from eating and drinking, and then once we feel our need for those and realize that we can't really make them, and realize that it's only infinite power could create, every single piece of food for us. So then we will truly and sincerely offer our appreciation, offer our gratitude. So therefore, I think those 3 things is very, very important. So to understand the true source, to understand the value of the gift, and to understand our need for the gift. So the more we get, the true understanding of those 3 steps, I think the more we will offer a sincere appreciation. So in this regard, we can call it like a month of Ramadan is the month of thanksgiving, the month of gratitude. But the gratitude that the practice we go through is helping us, preparing us to offer a sincere gratitude. And therefore, I think then when the next paragraph talks about, fasting is the key to the true, sincere, comprehensive, universal gratitude. So that's how I see it's linked to each other.
Yeah, I think that Najati, you gave the key word there, the key sentence to the whole of tonight's session, and that is feeling the need. It's very easy for me to thank someone for bringing me a cup of tea when I'm sitting in a restaurant, or bringing me a nice meal in someone's house. Thanks are easy nominally, but to feel the need, and most of us don't feel our need. You know, to feel the need is to realize that we are existentially poor and impotent, that we own nothing and that we are nothing. And again, that's easy to say on paper. So nominally giving thanks, and a lot of us even don't do that, you know, particularly in some communities and in some places, thanks and gratitude are quite rare. And that's because we don't realize our need. To really understand that every second you are dependent on the next breath, you are dependent on divine grace, you are dependent on the whole creation existing for another second, and that Allah creates the whole of the universe so that you can carry on existing. So from the point of view of ahadiyya, from the point of view of this exclusive uniqueness, this exclusive unity, everything is created for you. Everything in the universe is created so that you can continue to exist for another millisecond. And that need is absolute. Just as he is an absolute giver and bestower of bounties, it makes sense that the need that he is fulfilling is an absolute need. And that is not easy just to sit down and to rationalize. You know, when you're drinking a cup of tea and you have your sandwich or your cake and you're sitting down and you're chatting and you're talking, you have to be in a situation where those distractions are not there. And the distraction of consumption, it's consumption that really distracts us and makes us think that we are something, that we have something and that we are something. Because we're constantly putting fuel into our bodies. This is where the food and drink comes in. We're constantly putting fuel into our bodies, and our bodies need fuel to be able to operate. And our bodies, when they are operating, give us the illusion of power. And we appropriate that power for ourselves. So what Allah does, he says, strip away all of these distractions and force yourself into a position where you will confront your own true humanity, which is the impotent and the poor. And this he does by giving us Ramadan as another bounty.
Jazakallah. So just to elaborate a little more on this highlighted sentence here, so let me read that part again. We are to an extent indebted to those servants, and we pay them a price accordingly, and showing them great respect and gratitude that in actual fact they don't merit. As human beings, I think this is our fitrah, how Allah created us. When we are gifted something, we have that feel of thanking. So in this case, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though he is the he's the one truly giving us those bounties, those gifts, we are thanking him either at all or maybe not properly, even though we have it in our fitrah. So why, what might be the cause for this? So is that the forgetfulness we mentioned in the prior point, or anything else comes to mind, Brother Colin?
Repeat that. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So the highlighted sentence here says that we pay, even though we pay a price for the stuff we, let's say, get, buy, whatever, even though we paid that, still we show respect and have the gratitude and thank them. And that is in our fitrah, in our nature. Allah created in that way. Even that is the case, even though that is the case, sometimes either we don't thank Allah at all, or maybe we don't thank him properly. So my question was, even though that is in our nature, we don't do it in the right way. Is that because of the forgetfulness we read in the prior section, or was there more to it?
Well, if you're talking about the pay them a price accordingly, showing them great respect and gratitude that they do not merit, which is what I thought you were highlighting. That's because there's a very thin line between shirk and true belief, and either we pay too much attention to causes or we ignore them. So you have to tread a fine line, because Allah says that we have to have recourse to causes. In other words, we have to see causes for what they really are. Now, if we ignore them, then we ignore divine wisdom. If we pay them too much attention, then we're giving them too much power, we're according them too much power. So it's this very fine distinction between realizing that they are only there as tray bearers and not according them the merit that they don't deserve. So therefore, it has to be very precise. We are indebted and we're not indebted at the same time. So that's why we have to do this in accordance with wisdom.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Brother Nejati, go ahead, please.
I think, yeah, that's, if I can add it, I think it could be for two reasons, as I mentioned. Maybe, we don't even see there is a gift. That's one thing. Second, even when we see, we don't understand the value of gift. And think in this way, imagine, let's say a poor student, you walk into school or using the public transportation and having difficulty. Then now you send a brand new BMW as a gift. Now, tell me, will it be possible for this person to say, no, I'm not going to thank, or what is the likelihood for the person not to be thankful? I think any person, any students who in need of a car, if they get a great brand new car, they will be extremely thankful to the one who give it as a gift. But now, sometimes I ask my student, because in economics, we do discuss in terms of the pricing. I think we can blame somehow economics for that one, because we determine the value of everything based on the exchange value, the market value. The market value is determined based on scarcity. It doesn't really reflect the true value of some things. Now, I ask my student when I teach, I say, if you truly thinks the actual value of a single banana and BMW, as an economist, if you have to build, make a banana from scratch, which one will be more valuable? From economic point of view, no doubt, a single banana will be valuable than all BMW cars. The reason, because economists will say the price of something can't be less than the cost of production. So if we have to build a single banana from scratch, from atoms, and it's going to cost us billions of dollars if we can ever succeed. We can't do it, actually. So therefore, it's really the problem here that we don't truly value when we get it, because we think they are just, what is the price? So the exchange value in the market is very little. Why? Because it's sent to us in abundance. So therefore, I think when the Quran says, وَهُوَ الرَّزَّاقُ ذُو الْقُوَّةِ الْمَتِينَ, so in a sense, that basically is telling us, look, who give you all this bounty? And it's really interesting that despite that we have been given certain, let's say, appearance power to do something, but we never gain power to make even a single piece of food for ourselves. We can only mix what is given to us through plants and animals, but we can't just make it. It's if let's say we really are asked to go and make our own food from atoms, we're going to die, we're going to starve, which basically it's very clear that we need such food, we need such fuel, as Kolnabi mentioned, but we can't make it. So therefore, I think the concept of both ajz and faqr here is really important. So ajz in the sense that we are impotent, But and faqr here is really is our poverty. That's we are in need of all these things, but we cannot make it. We don't have power to make it. So I think the reason that we do not truly appreciate, because we think as if we have a power, we can make it, we take it for granted, and because we don't truly value those bounties, because in a market society, the value of everything is determined based on the exchange value. And oxygen is free, therefore we think it doesn't have any value. But in reality, in terms of the need fulfillment, nothing is more valuable than oxygen for us. So I think that is, so therefore the month of Ramadan, in a way, that is a month of reflection, that we sit down and we go through the process, because when we get hungry, that we, now we have to think of this bounties, this food, this drink, and that's helped us to come to the realization. So it's not like as a test that whether we can endure or not. I think that is not really the point. I was like, it was in the news, maybe some of you read it as well, a few days ago. There was 2 boys who got lost in the forest in Amazon for 26 days. They were like, I think 7, 8 years old. They survived without food. So it's not like we cannot survive 24 hours without food. I think that's not the test. The test is that when we go through this process, that we're supposed to really reflect and come to certain realization. And I think that's one point here, is to feel our need, to feel our impotence, and then as a result, to offer a sincere, comprehensive appreciation and gratitude.
Could I add something there?
Please.
It's all of that I would agree with. The only thing is, we mustn't kid ourselves. We mustn't delude ourselves into thinking that, okay, there are certain things that we can do, such as we can make a BMW, and we can set up factories and we can mass produce them, but we can't produce a banana from scratch, from nothing. But in actual fact, we can't produce a BMW either, because the power that is given to us to on the surface to put together, pieces of metal and screw them together, and we say we're making a BMW, we don't even have the power to do that. And I think a lot of people think in terms of, well, we give thanks to Allah for all of the things that He gives us. But there are lots of things that we can do as human beings, the powers that we have. But we don't have any power, not to make a BMW, not to make a banana. So a BMW is no different to a banana, really. And we have to make thanks for the BMW that we appear to be putting together with our own ingenuity and our own prowess. But we don't have ingenuity and we don't have prowess. These are things which are all given. So I think we need to be a little bit careful. We tend to think in terms of, there are a series of things which we can do and a series of things which we can't do. But in actual fact, we can't do anything.
I think very good point. So it's in a sense that this is acz mutlak, and absolute,
absolutely,
absolute power.
Jahul and Zalum, Jahul and Zalum. That's why we accepted the amana. We are Jahul and Zalum, and as you can understand from Jahul and Zalum, they are the intensive forms of the adjective. That means we are absolutely Jahul, absolutely Jahil, and absolutely Zalim. Which means basically, as you just said, Nejati, absolute need, absolute faqr.
Jazakallah, brothers, all great points, mashallah. So we are, I think, out of time. So I'll just reread the last 2 paragraphs quickly and maybe finish for this week. Inshallah, we will continue next week. Fasting in Ramadan is thus the key to true, sincere, comprehensive, and universal gratitude. This is because at other times of the year, most people who are relatively well off don't realize the value of the bounties they receive, since they don't experience real hunger or true need. Those whose stomachs are full, especially if they are rich, don't understand the bounty there is in a single piece of dry bread. When the time to break the fast arrives, however, a believer's taste buds testify that dry bread is one of Allah's most precious and valuable bounties. During Ramadan, everyone, from king to beggar, expresses a kind of gratitude through understanding the true worth of those bounties. Moreover, since eating is forbidden during daylight hours, those who have fasted will say, These bounties do not belong to me. I am not free to eat them, since they belong to another and have been given to us as gifts. I'll therefore wait for his command. They will recognize the bounty as a bounty, and they will give thanks accordingly. Fasting is in many respects like a key to gratitude, which is one of humankind's fundamental duties. So before we finish, Brother Nejati or Brother Colin, do you want to add a couple sentences?
I want to leave everyone with a question I personally ask as well. Let everyone reflect until next week. Why these lessons do not come in terms of, let's say, conceptual, theoretical knowledge, have to be through experience? Why all those things we discussed that is not just put it in an eye and say, be aware of this bounty, Allah gave it to you. Why we have to actually experience that? Why, what is that? What is the epistemic importance of experience versus the conceptual, theoretical, understanding or discussion of concept? That, I think this really, I don't know, to me is a very interesting question, and I think we can discuss perhaps next week.
It's a great question. It's a very, very good question.
Yes, thank you. Now we have a homework, inshallah. Okay. Subhanek Allahümme salli ve sellim ala seyyidina Muhammedin salatan tekunu leke ruda'an ve li hakkihi eda'an bi adedi thevabi qiraati hurufil Kur'ani fi şehri Ramazan ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ve sellim. Subhane rabbike rabbil izzeti amma yasifun ve selamun alal murselin velhamdülillahi rabbil alemin. El Fatiha.